Honestly, throughout my whole life, like I've never really felt like I fit in anywhere.
What does a day in life of an adult with ADHD look like?
Imagine you're walking up the stairs, right? But you've got roller skates on. And all your peers and stuff are all walking up the stairs fine. And you're constantly like slipping down, like smacking your head. And you're like, why is this taking me so much longer?
Were there any labels that were given to you?
The one that came up quite a lot was, you're so bipolar. Or you're too sensitive, or you're too loud. To get to a diagnosis, you're like hiking up this massive mountain, and you can see the diagnosis there, which is the peak, and then you get to it, and actually you look up, and actually you're just at the base. It's an absolute postcode lottery. Like, I think the longest wait is, is it in Devon? It's like up to 10 years.
What?
10 years of not knowing.
Take me back from the time when you did not know that you had ADHD.
All you think is that I'm broken, I'm different, I don't fit in. And you really just build up this constant thing of self-hatred, essentially. One of the things that would have been different is hopefully, maybe, suicide sort of attempts and suicidal sort of ideation. Adults with ADHD are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. 1 in 4 women with ADHD attempt it. Men are much more successful and stuff.
What do you think ADHD has taught you about yourself?
It's okay to be different. And that it's those people who don't feel that they fit into society that will shine the brightest eventually. Okay.
Welcome to Dose of Health.
Thanks. I just want to say thanks. Yeah, no,
Okay.
It's cool.
So you know what, today what we're going to talk about is ADHD. But
Yes.
before we talk about or get into the nitty-gritty of it, I want you to tell me, what does a day in life of an adult living with ADHD look like?
Can I swear?
You can do
It can
whatever
be-
you want.
It can be a shit show. To be quite frank, it's a shit show. It's an emotional roller coaster, and you go to bed and you're like, what a day. But honestly, it really varies from day to day. So like yesterday I had something which I call like an itchy day, and I'm not talking about vaginal thrush. I'm talking about like, you know, like sensory thing, like all of my clothes like felt too tight, like too clingy on me and stuff. And then I'm constantly being distracted by this, that and the other. And then you're expected to balance all this stuff that's going on, the constant internal chatter from the moment I wake up to the moment I actually go to sleep. There's noise in my head, whether it's like me thinking about this podcast or, you know, we all love Clover, you know, that butter thing.
Yeah.
It just non-stop. And so you've got all that going on in the background, and then you're expected to actually act like a real life adult of like, you know, having responsibilities. Like obviously we're both pharmacists, like at work and stuff, being like professional, you know, stuff like showering can be really then difficult, like stuff that's called like executive functioning, like daily struggle of like, oh shit, I haven't showered for 5 days, like, oh God, I need to get in the shower. And then it's like a whole big thing. And all of this just adds up, and people are like, I don't get why you're tired, like, stop talking, or like, I'm talking to you, like, can you concentrate? So, oh God, I don't know what I'm saying, but basically, it's really up and down all the time, and like, but every day there is at least one struggle. And actually, since being diagnosed with it, at least now I have the language of like, okay, I'm struggling with this because of X, Y, and Z. With it before, it's like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And I never knew. And it's only, start of this year that I was like, okay.
So how is your work day different to a day that you have off, E.T.? Is there any difference?
I mean, there is, because in a way I have structure. So it's like, okay, you have to start at 9, which, yes, even though I work from home, I am late because of time blindness, happy days. But at least there's a structure. At least I'm like, okay, it's lunch break. It's my lunch break. I have to eat something. And my day finishes at 5:30 and then I'm kind of free to do whatever. So in a way, having that structure does help me. However, I do find that because I work from home, it can be like quite like monotonous, and like I do get distracted, like I don't have motivation. But then on my days off, people are like, oh, like make sure you rest. And I'm like, well, that's all very well and good, you telling me to rest. But the problem is that I've got this constant hyperactivity. So I never feel rested after I do rest because I've always got this internal chatter, or I'll start reading a book and then I'm like, oh my God, actually let me get my painting out and stuff, you know? So it feels like there's never any actual downtime. And I just have so many interests that you get like hyper focus on something and then I'll just like rabbit hole down it for hours. And then I look at the time, I'm like, what have I done with my day? Like 5 hours I've been looking at like the world's best water slide videos on YouTube, and I'm like, what have I done with my day? And then you feel crap about yourself.
Right.
So yes, like ADHD, I think often in like the media and stuff is portrayed as like, haha, so fun, so quirky. But the reality of living it with it like day in, day out, like it's not fun. It's actually not fun.
I want you to take a step back, you know, and take me back from the time when you did not know that you had ADHD, right? You got diagnosed in January this year, right? Yeah. What was life like before for you? Like, imagine as a, you know, trainee pharmacist or a student where you knew something is not right, but you don't know what that is. Like, how different, like, what was that like?
Honestly, like, throughout my whole life, like I've never really felt like I fit in anywhere. And I think this is quite a common theme that comes up with people who find out that they're neurodivergent. You just constantly feel like a misfit. You're constantly sort of shape-shifting to fit in with whoever you are there, but you never truly feel part of it. And you see that all your peers are managing. Like if I'm taking the example of like when I was doing my trainee pharmacist stuff, like, okay, yes, like everybody is stressed because you're studying, you're working, fine. But I just felt like I was always finding it so much more difficult than others. And then I was like, why? You know, like I was living by myself for the first time. And like, I mean, properly by myself, like not with housemates. So not only was I trying to juggle like, you know, working, the studying, but also like feeding myself, like cleaning my clothes and stuff, which I know it's like, well, you're an adult, surely you should be able to do that. But I was just struggling with all these daily tasks on top of it. And then you essentially have just like a complete meltdown and you're like, I can't do this. Like I'm a shit adult. And that's for me, I think when the depression really kicked in big time. Yeah, and I guess the way that I would kind of like explain it, like I'm quite a visual person, is imagine you're walking up the stairs, right? But you've got roller skates on and you look to your left and all your peers and stuff are all walking up the stairs fine. They've all got trainers on and you're constantly like slipping down, you know, like with the roller skates and stuff, like smacking your head and you're trying to get up and you're like, why is this taking me so much longer? Like, why is this so much harder? Like, why am I so exhausted? Everybody else is doing this fine. Why can't I not? And then I guess me having that diagnosis is someone coming over to me and be like, hey, you've just got different shoes on. Like, you've got roller skates on, so this is why it's a bit harder for you. But actually, with support, like, I don't know, using a lift or a handrail or something, you can get there too. Might take you a bit more time. You've just got different shoes on, that's all, you know?
Wow. Were there any labels that were given to you, E.T., before you knew that it was ADHD? Were people...
Yeah. The one that came up quite a lot was, oh, you're so bipolar. Or are you sure you haven't got, you know, BPD, borderline personality disorder? Or you're too sensitive, or you're too loud. You're always, you know, trying to be center of attention. Like, you're stupid. Like, are you deaf? Like, are you listening? Like, all this kind of stuff. And I've had that from day dot, you know. And like, I know sometimes people maybe are saying it as like a semi-joke, but it's still a slight. And you're like, yeah, what actually is wrong with me?
And you ended up blaming yourself rather than challenging
100% you blame yourself. Of course you do. Like, you're never going to turn around and be like, actually, no, I'm not stupid because there's a 30%, you know, verbal processing delay or something, because you don't have that language and you don't have the understanding. All you think is that I'm broken, I'm different, I don't fit in, I'm lazy, I'm stupid. And you really just build up this constant thing of self-hatred, essentially. And so you can't find your voice to fight back, to advocate for yourself, because you don't know what's going on.
Mad.
So, yeah.
What finally pushed you to seek help? Like, was there a moment that you remember where you were like, was it an aha moment, or was it like a completely crazy moment where you're like, well, this is something wrong. I need help, like professional help. Do you remember that time?
So, sorry, a little burp there. I shouldn't have had the sparkling thing. We're Gucci. So we're all Gucci. So essentially, I guess if I'll just do a very brief like summary of it. It was probably when I was a teenager, I was really struggling with my moods, and I was struggling with self-harm. And then, the school, like, oh, go see the school counsellor, blah, blah, blah. And, pushed on through university. And then it was probably at university, my closest friend was like, second year, she was like, dude, I honestly think you've got ADHD. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, obviously I don't have ADHD, like I'm fine. And then pushed on through, and then it got to pre-reg year, the trainee year, and that's when the wheels really started to come off. Like already the fourth year, I was just like collapsing. And then pre-reg year was just awful. That was the first time that I actually went to the GP about depression, got started on sertraline. And then anyway, fast forward, maybe ended up going to the GP about 3 more times about like these mood fluctuations. So one time I was sent to the psychiatrist to be screened for query bipolar, even though I was like, like I don't know loads about bipolar, but that's pretty extreme and I don't think I'm quite like that. But there's definitely some sort of similarities in terms of this up, down, impulsive spending, that kind of stuff. And then they were like, no. And honestly, that experience that I had with that particular community psychiatry team was just hideous. Like, patient care was piss poor. I would never wish that on anyone. That was rough. And then I started having some art therapy actually during COVID. They were doing it for staff. And it was actually the art therapist who just saw me, like, she was like, draw a nice picture. And I couldn't. And she was like, come work with me. And then she was the one who was like, these kind of like up and down things and these constant like thought bubbles and stuff, like maybe we should write a letter to your GP about query borderline personality disorder. So I went back to the GP for that, and then psychiatrist for that, and he was like, no. And he was like, but if you want, we can try you on lamotrigine. I was like, what the hell? I was like, no, I don't, like, no, actually I don't want to do that. And then
lamotrigine is like a mood stabilizer.
Like a mood stabilizer, yeah, exactly.
Because it can be used for other things.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a mood stabilizer. And then I just like mentioned to him, I was like, oh, and this was maybe 4 years ago. I mentioned to him, I was like, oh, actually my brother's just been diagnosed with ADHD. And I've done like very little amount of reading about, how ADHD can present differently in women. And he looked at me and was like, you're high functioning, you're a pharmacist, you did really well at school, there's no way you can have ADHD. It's like, okay. And now that was the second psychiatrist who told me that.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, let's just leave it.
This is 4 years ago.
This is 4 years ago.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. And so anyway, so then sertraline, like I came off that because I was on the max dose of 200 milligram. I'd been on that for years.
Which is for depression.
Which is for depression and a bit of anxiety as well. But my moods were just getting worse and worse, like more and more extreme up and downs. And I was like, nah, this ain't working anymore. Went back to the GP. She was like, let's try on mirtazapine.
So a different antidepressant. And I was like, tried that for 2 days. And honestly, like I was saying to you the other day, when we just whack elderly people on 15 milligrams, I was on 7.5 and I nearly got run over twice because I was so out of it. Wow.
Like I was so drowsy. I had 2 days of that, and the GP was like, listen, this isn't working. I'm going to refer you to psychiatry again. We'll see what they say. So I saw a female psychiatrist actually this time, and she really listened to me. And again, she was like, BPD, not quite sure. Like you are again kind of like flagging symptoms, but not quite like strong enough for that. And then she was like, let's try venlafaxine. And then
another
antidepressant,
wow.
which is an SNRI this time. SNRI, yeah. And so we started on that. And then I just, again, casually mentioned this to her. I was like, my brother was diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago. I had mentioned it to a consultant, but he was like, no, you're a pharmacist, like you're functioning, like you're fine. And she was like, And I actually thought that was really brave of her to be like, kind of, obviously the consultant wasn't in the room, but he was still her consultant. And she was like, you know what, like, let's not dismiss it, actually, because you're right, like there is more research coming out about women.
Yeah.
So she was like, why don't we just send you through an assessment as like a differential kind of diagnosis thing? So I was like, okay. And in the meantime, she was like, you know, we'll refer you to like emotional skills group and stuff, which obviously that never came through. I referred myself for talk therapy, blah, 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 the usual NHS crap. And she was like 3 years waiting list. And then I found I could do it by right to choose. And then voila.
Wow. So, my God, this was quite a journey. That actually
Huge.
took years and years and years.
Yeah.
And you know, some part of me thinks that if you had gotten the right diagnosis earlier, like years ago, would you have ever needed antidepressants? We will never know.
We'll never know. And that's the thing, is that particularly for like later diagnosed people, I think this is kind of like a question that they ask themselves. It's almost like sometimes being late diagnosed with ADHD or autism and stuff is sort of compared to like the cycle of grief. And maybe that's sort of like the sort of bargaining kind of phase where it's like, well, if I was diagnosed earlier, then this wouldn't have happened, then that wouldn't have happened.
Right,
but you
right.
kind of can't get too caught up in that.
Right.
Because it is what it is.
Yeah.
But no, like my life might have been very different, or it might have been roughly the same. But actually, I probably wouldn't have been put on all these different antidepressants. Like I know there is medication for ADHD as well, which is why actually when I was put on the venlafaxine, it can be used as off-label or off-license for ADHD.
Right.
And I had started noticing when I was on the higher dose that actually, and even my parents are like, oh, you don't seem quite as like impulsive as you used to be. But obviously ADHD still wasn't on the card, so we didn't really know why. But yeah, maybe my life would have been different. I think one of the things that would have been quite different is hopefully, maybe, I don't know, it still might have happened, is actually the sort of suicide sort of attempts and suicidal sort of ideation. Because actually adults with ADHD, and again, this is like the darker side of ADHD that no one really talks about, is that actually adults with ADHD are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. And, you know, 1 in 4 women with ADHD attempt it, men are much more successful and stuff. And so, yeah, maybe I wouldn't have got to that point. So
it's very brave of you to be talking about it. And I think, you know, I think one of the things I didn't mention at the start of the podcast is the entire reason why you're here and you want to tell your stories. You want to raise awareness and you want to make sure that people who may be going through the same process to actually think slightly differently. How did you feel? Do you remember the moment when you got the diagnosis? Like, what was that like when you know, this is the reason for all of it?
It's like a
horse
like? Having its blinkers taken off, and you're like, holy shit. But when my assessor, who actually she was a pharmacist herself, told me the diagnosis, I don't know, I was even though I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that I have ADHD, but because I've been dismissed so many times, I was like, guaranteed they're going to be like, you're kind of showing traits, but you're not quite meeting the criteria for a diagnosis. Go back to your GP. And then I'd be on the same cycle of there's something going on with me, but I don't know what. Nobody knows what's going on with me. And then just kind of you fall through the cracks, and then you have to push to get back into the system. And that's what I thought was going to happen. But when she said it to me, I just burst into tears, and it was like a mixture of shock, because you've got that diagnosis, that validation, which I know some people are saying, like, you don't need a diagnosis for validation. But for me personally, like, I needed it. Yeah. And relief that this was like the first time I ever felt like someone had truly listened to me and wasn't shutting me down, wasn't, you know, pushing me to the side. Like, she really, you know, it's a 2.5-hour interview, which was so of ADHD. You're like, oh my God, I can't talk anymore. It's freaking long. But she really listened to me, and also she adapted it in terms of like taking into the fact that I was a woman as well. So yeah, shock, relief, grief, because suddenly this perception that you have of yourself, that you've always had of yourself, it just suddenly shattered like that. And you're like, well, with this new lens, who am I? And it goes back to that thing of what you're saying of like, then you start looking back through everything. You're like, oh my God, this is why this happened, this is why I act the way, and then it like all the pieces start falling together. And I was kind of saying to like my mum the other day, it feels like to get to a diagnosis, you're like hiking up this massive mountain, and you can see the diagnosis there, which is the peak, and then you get to it, and actually you look up, and actually you're just at the base. Like you've got so much more work. It's like, I'm ADHD, now what? And that's kind of where you're like, oh crap, now what do I do with this information?
Wow. Let's get into the basics of it. I have some stats that I got off Google. So it says estimated number of people with ADHD. In May 2025, it is estimated that approximately 2.5 million people in England have ADHD, including those without a diagnosis. And of this, 741,000 are children and young people aged between 5 and 24. And this is what I found very interesting. People waiting for an ADHD assessment in March 2025, up to 549,000, over 500,000 people are waiting for an ADHD assessment. And in March 2025, up 20,000 people were newly referred for an ADHD assessment to mental health services. Like, so this 500,000 people are probably going through the same cycle that you're going through, thinking, is it ADHD? Is it depression? Is it bipolar?
What's wrong with me?
What is wrong with me? And like you said, with the suicide rate being so high, like you really worry about stuff like that, you know? And I think this is why these conversations are very important. So hopefully, even if it can reach to, I don't know, 100 people, that could be like 100 people saying, well, hang on a second, it is worth waiting for a referral, and let's not think that there is something wrong with them.
Exactly. And I think, honestly, like the stats don't surprise me. I mean, mostly because also I'd already read the stats before, like, so I started doing like presentations and stuff. And actually, subsequently, October is ADHD Awareness Month.
Yes. Yeah. So it's very timely that you're
very
doing
timely.
it.
So here we are.
I'd like to take a credit that it was all thought through, but...
It was just like, oh, I don't know when we're going to do this. Let's just book it in. I'm really sorry, I forgot the question. What was the question?
No. I mean, it wasn't actually a question. It was a fact that the stats that we were talking about, that, you know, there are so many people who are still waiting. So this is an important conversation from the point of view that people who are waiting, it might be actually a very good thing to hear for them, to actually say that, look, you know, it is worth waiting. And whilst you're waiting, please don't do anything that you may regret.
Yes, definitely.
Later
and
life.
The problem is that if you are ADHD and you've got this tendency of impulsivity, that is very difficult. So what we're seeing is, you know, like a lot of, for example, like me, they were like, oh, the NHS, it will probably take about 3 years for you to be assessed.
Insane.
And I was like,
insane.
Oh God, I'm going to be like, I don't even know how old. And actually, you look at the different areas of the UK and the waiting list will differ massively depending on your postcode. It's an absolute postcode lottery. Like, I think the longest wait is it in Devon? It's like up to 10 years.
What?
10 years of not knowing. And so essentially what people then start doing is they think, I can't be up, like, no, like I need to know now, which is fair enough, you're within your right. And they think, no, actually I'm going to go for a private assessment. And so, you know, and which is pretty much what my parents did with my brother, actually. And so you pay for a private assessment, that's like 600, 700 odd quid, if not more. And then they say, do you want medication? So then you start paying private prescriptions for that. But before you know it, you spent, you know, thousands.
Wow.
There is another route, which is a route that I went, which is a right to choose route. And for people who are considering going for an ADHD assessment, that's probably the one that I would recommend.
It's called right to choose.
Right to choose, yeah.
For ADHD assessment.
Yeah, okay, and so they do it for autism as well.
Okay.
So essentially what it is that your local like integrated care board will pay private healthcare providers who have a contract with them. So you are still getting care like under the NHS, but via a private healthcare provider. And so you're seen a lot quicker. Like there is still a waiting list, like, but the majority of the time it's like a few months or something, which, I'm not being funny, if like you're on a list for years or was...
Especially if you're in Devon.
Especially if you're in Devon,
10 years.
Up to 10 years, yeah.
That is insane.
Insane.
Okay, so teach me, E.T., tell me, what is ADHD?
Yeah. So obviously, like, I'm not an expert.
No,
like,
no,
this
of
is
course,
not my field.
Of course.
Just because you're a lived expert doesn't mean you're an expert. But
No.
from my understanding, my research, it feels like it should be a simple question.
Right.
Right? And with a simple answer.
But it's not.
But it's kind of not.
Of course.
So what I'm going to give right now is kind of like as if you open up like a medical textbook.
Yes, yes.
So the way it'd be described in like a medical textbook is like it's a neurodevelopmental condition, and it is caused by, they think anyway, the theories are dysregulation of neurotransmitters of dopamine and norepinephrine, and potentially there's also like weaker.
For people who are not clinical, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain.
Yeah, exactly. And so sometimes what we see is that, like, you know, people on Instagram or whatever be like, oh, ADHD equals low dopamine, but actually that's not correct, because if you think about other conditions that with like a lack of dopamine, such as Parkinson's,
that's right,
you'd have much more like motor symptoms, and there definitely is, you know, some sort of thing going on with the dopamine and stuff, but it's more a dysregulation of like how this dopamine and norepinephrine, these chemical signals, are kind of sent across the brain, and how they're sort of translated in the brain as well, as opposed to a pure lack of. So, but obviously with the medications that are used for ADHD, they do work on these sort of neurotransmitter systems to sort of block the reuptake bit to sort of boost the levels of. So that's kind of why that theory is sort of come out of, okay, it's probably something to do with that. And
Makes
then
sense.
also stuff to do with like, I think it's like slightly delayed cortical maturation and stuff as well. So that's like but like it does actually, once you get into adulthood, sort of level out with your peers. But that is like, I went down an absolute rabbit hole the other day of trying to figure out, you know, like the genetics behind it, you know, what transporters is it? And it's just like, it's just information overload. I'm like, okay, neurodevelopmental condition with dysregulation of neurotransmitters. That's
right. It's
very simple.
It stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yeah.
So again, Google
Yeah.
says it's a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person's brain functions, leading to persistent patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity.
Yes.
Right?
And so that's kind of the key, essentially, to when you actually get assessed. They use something called the DSM, which is a Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5.
Let's talk about that. So
Okay.
how is it diagnosed?
So essentially what will happen is they will send you what seems like 1,000,000,001 forms asking you about your childhood, how, you know, your adulthood, how it affects you in work, school, friends, relationships, well-being, all that kind of stuff. And what they're doing is they're essentially seeing how it affects you in your daily life.
Right.
Because I think that's something that is quite often a sort of misconception, is like ADHD is like, oh, you can't focus at school, like naughty kids can't focus at school. But actually, like, it will impact you day in, day out in various aspects of your life. And then they have the DSM-5. So there's like criteria A, which is like the inattentive kind of signs, and then B, which will be like the hyperactivity, impulsivity. So like the A sort of criteria, the inattention kind of thing would be like, you know, losing items, you know, daydreaming, that kind of stuff. And then hyperactivity will be like fidgeting or restless, stuff like that. And it's particularly this sort of hyperactivity, impulsivity side that when you say to someone, like when I said to you, what is ADHD? You were like, what is it? I can't remember, actually. I was like, when I said to you, I was like, okay, if I ask you what is ADHD, like what springs to mind?
Oh yeah, I think I just said difficult to pay attention or something.
Yeah, difficult to pay attention, like, you know, wanting to be center of attention, you know, like talking a lot. And so a lot of the time that's what we tend to focus on is these sort of outward hyperactivity, impulsivity kind of things. But actually, like, a lot of it, as I was saying earlier, is like internalized as well. But what is really missing from the DSM-5 is a lot of people talk about the sort of emotional dysregulation, like I was kind of saying about earlier, and that's actually not involved in the DSM-5 at all. Like that's not a criteria to be diagnosed with ADHD. But actually, when you look at the criteria, pretty much everyone could be like, yeah, I can do that sometimes, like losing your kids. Like, yeah, I can do that.
Because kids are, you know, they are difficult to
kids
have.
run around. They're just kids, you know?
Yeah.
Or, you know, people might just be really chatty and stuff like that. So when you look at it, pretty much everybody could be like, yeah, I'll probably do quite a few things. But the difference between, and I guess that's kind of one of the sort of myth thing that I was going to chat about of everyone's a bit ADHD, is it's obviously like the amount of ticks that you need on the diagnosis sheet is obviously a kind of an arbitrary number in a way.
Right.
But it's more the fact that it is persistent since childhood, because obviously it's neurodevelopmental.
Yes.
And you meet enough of the sort of criteria. And the most important thing is that it is persistent in different aspects of your life, and it has a significant impact on your daily life. That's the difference between being like, yeah, it's just like a human behavior, human trait, versus no, actually this is clinically ADHD.
Wow. So I'm trying to like picture it in my mind, like what happens. So GP refers you to psychiatrist, or okay, GP refers you to a psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist sends you a lot of forms to fill, and the forms are questions to say, do you suffer from this? Do you
And also from your childhood as well, or from someone who knows you really well for a long time,
right? They
They also need to fill in their part as well.
Wow.
So the reason being is that because obviously, like in a way, if you're thinking, oh, I'm ADHD, like you might be biased.
Right.
So like my mum filled mine in of like when I was a kid, and actually one of the questions that kind of surprised me on there was this thing about sensory issues, and I was like, huh, like what's that doing on there?
What kind of, like, what was the question?
So I can't really remember. Classic.
It's okay.
But it was basically like, as a child or as an adult, like, do you have any sort of sensory issues? And I was like,
right.
Yeah, actually thinking about it, like really hate sand. Like I don't like things when like things are wet. Like what I was saying earlier about having like an itchy day, like every bit of my clothes, or like sometimes it's like too bright, it's too loud.
And I see sensory. Okay,
it's like sensory, or like smells. I'm like,
right.
Oh God, like it's really like sensitive to that. Or like dogs barking is like really like loud, and I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, oh, actually, yeah. But obviously, like I can't really remember that from my childhood, which is why I needed my mum to then go back and, you know,
to minimize the bias, basically.
Essentially,
Fine.
yeah.
So,
and to make sure that it was persistent from childhood as well.
Of course.
Because if this all started like randomly coming about now, like last few months, and there was nothing in childhood, then you might be a bit like, unlikely. Although what I will say is, again, remember that girls can present very differently to boys.
Right. So I want to talk about that, definitely, the girl versus boy difference. But let's finish the assessment part. So you and your mother filled these billion forms.
Oh my! And can I just say, there's no deadline. Okay, it's open text. There's no deadline.
Exactly.
1,001 forms thinking about to when you were a kid. I'm like, forget it. It took me. So that's what I mean. I'm like bitching and moaning, like, oh, it's a 10-year waiting list. It took me 7 months to fill in the goddamn forms because I was like, I can't.
You just can't focus.
Do it. I can't focus.
That's mad. So basically, once you did it, 7 months later.
7 months later, yeah, very, she did it.
They went back to the psychiatrist.
Yes.
And then what happens?
And then you get an appointment. So,
right.
I'm going to burp.
You can burp whatever you want. We will... Oh, you're hilarious.
Did that sound good? ASMR-y.
Very sensory.
I've got sensory overload. Sorry.
Okay.
It goes back to the psychiatrist.
Yeah, it goes back
and
to the
then they're like,
psychiatrist.
okay, yes, you seem to be sort of meeting sort of the sort of threshold or whatever, like, yes, let's do this assessment, and then they book you in for a 2-hour assessment.
Wow. Okay.
My Lord, it was
so this is face-to-face statement.
Yeah, so I had mine remotely, and she was background of a pharmacist as well, but I think off the top of my head, I think what they do is they then get it signed off by a psychiatrist maybe. I don't know, but you can be an assessor and not be a psychiatrist essentially.
Right. It's very interesting because, you know, like when, again, this is Google that was saying that it is not really a mental health condition, but it does affect your mental health.
Yeah,
and
it's
psychiatrists
tricky.
are dealing with it, isn't it?
It's tricky because it comes under the DSM-5, which is, you know, for psychiatric
Mental
disorders.
health. Yes,
There
yes.
is a lot of crossover with, you know, issues with mental health because of it. But in its true form of a neurodevelopmental condition, I don't know if it is classed as a mental. I don't know. It's quite a grey, kind of like overlappy kind of thing.
Fair. Okay.
So you need to treat the two together, essentially, is what I would say.
I was just curious, yeah. Okay, now tell me about this thing that you mentioned, that the difference of ADHD appearing in men versus women. Like, how is it different?
So, if we go back to this thing of when you think of someone with ADHD, what's the picture of this person in your mind?
Oh, God. Same. I would say attention seeking.
But what do they sort of like look like? Like, are they a child, an adult, elderly person?
I was going to say a child. ADHD.
What gender?
Probably a male. Yeah. That's the first thing that does come into my head. I'm not going to lie.
No judgment here, because the majority of the people, that's what they thought. Me too, before I learned about it.
Right.
Yeah, you think of a young boy sort of messing around, like centre of attention, like Tasmanian devil kind of thing. And actually, there are girls, you know, who may be sometimes labelled as like boisterous and stuff. So maybe that can be a bit of the sort of hyperactivity sort of coming out like outwardly. But for me, like, I don't think I ever was a boisterous kind of girl. I was actually like very like hyper focused on like my jigsaw puzzles and like reading and like interested in nature. But the hyperactivity is quite internalized, and I think that's the difference often. And it's not to say that, you know, boys and men, it can't be internalized either. Like, there are some people who are quite naturally quiet, but they've got a lot going on in there. But generally speaking, that's what we sort of tend to see. And then maybe like, you know, women will be labelled as like chatty, or like girls will be labelled as like chatty and bubbly. And so that's kind of the difference. Whether boys will be labelled as like, you know, they're just really boisterous, and it's all these kind of like gender roles that sort of play into it.
Interesting. Does genetics play a role into this? So potentially,
Hugely.
I'm just trying to think, are there any causes of this? And genetics came into a play. Is there a role?
It is. So actually, I think off the top of my head, there's this guy called Russell Barkley, who's like the sort of OG granddad of ADHD. He's like some American psychiatrist. And he says, you know, the hereditability,
something,
whatever.
Yeah. I know what you're trying to say.
Is about 80%.
Wow.
So there is quite a large sort of, but again, it's not like the same as, you know, like Huntington's disease, where there's like a specific gene for it.
Right.
It's like mutations of like lots of different genes. And there's also potentially like environmental factors, which I don't quite understand, to be honest with you. So again, it's like very complex. It's not the same as like, if we take the case of like Huntington's, it's like, well, there's a specific mutation on this gene, so therefore you're more likely to get it. It's kind of just a mishmash, I guess. But it is, like, if you look at it, like, my brother's ADHD, I'm ADHD, my mum's ADHD.
Wow, okay.
On my mum's side, I've got 4 cousins who are ADHD.
Oh, wow.
Like, and then you start looking back and you're like,
genetics.
Okay, this is maybe where it's come from.
It's playing a role.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you briefly mentioned treatment. You actually said that, you know, there is treatment available. Important to say that there is no cure for it, but it's a treatable condition. What are the treatment options?
So I guess this is maybe like the sort of internal conflict that I have in myself about ADHD, like when we call it a condition, which it is.
Right.
But we kind of, and it's interesting because I've got my sort of personal side, but also sort of my role as like a healthcare professional.
You're a pharmacist.
I'm a pharmacist, where maybe in the West sometimes we sort of are a bit too, I don't know, sort of over pathologize things, like over treat things. And I'm like, well, diagnosis equals pill equals this.
I agree. Yeah. Polypharmacy.
Polypharmacy.
We battle with polypharmacy all the time.
I love it in my care of the elderly. So I guess rather than, I don't really phrase it so much as like a condition to be cured or
Right.
treated. It's
Right.
more, I would say, like managed.
Right.
Which actually, like when you think about a lot of like sort of lifelong conditions, like, and I know it's just language, but that's kind of how I would prefer to say, is like, how can we manage it actually? How can we help you regulate a little bit better? So there's sort of, obviously there's medication.
Thank you for correcting me.
Oh, sorry. Bitch, you're wrong.
No, but it's important.
Yeah.
Language is important.
Language is important.
Yeah.
And again, kind of going back to this thing of, and language is important to kind of help with stigmas as well.
Yeah,
Because, you know,
yeah,
like, for
yeah.
example, if we're talking about HIV,
Yeah.
we would generally say how to like manage your HIV, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a lifelong sort of
Yeah.
condition, and
Yeah.
that kind of helps with the sort of stigma sort of side of things.
We don't say HIV patients or infection. We say people living with HIV.
Exactly,
So
and
that has a huge difference.
Exactly,
So I agree
and
with
that's
that.
exactly the same, like with ADHD and, you know, autism and
fair,
dyslexia and stuff.
fair.
So, yeah, so management of ADHD. So, yes, there is medication. So, sort of first line tends to be like stimulant medication,
Right.
which is like, you know, what you'll hear on American TV shows, like, have you taken your Ritalin?
Yes,
That's my
Ritalin.
American accent, by the way. Tip top.
When you have it in stock.
Yeah.
It's never in
It's
stock.
never in friggin' stock.
That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah.
Why is UK running out of tablets?
Yeah, so there's stimulant medication, so
Methylphenidate.
methylphenidate,
is the name,
dexamphetamine, and atomoxetine, which is actually a non-stimulant one.
Right.
And then, as we were saying earlier, the venlafaxine as well can be used. Obviously, I'm not a prescriber in ADHD, although if anybody listens to this,
You
I'm a
want to be-
prescriber. I would like a job, please. Yeah, so there's that. So there's medication. But I think, again, with everything that's a lifelong sort of condition, is we can't see medication as like the golden bullet, like the holy grail. Like ADHD management really has to have holistic treatment. And like, this is something I'm super passionate about, is that, yes, okay, the medication works for some people. For some people, it really doesn't. And, you know, for some people, they get really bad side effects and they're like, actually, I don't want to do this. You know, particularly parents like, why should I have to medicate my kids so they can fit in at school? Like, what the hell? Yeah. And then, so there's like, you know, therapy. So like at the moment, the NICE guidelines recommend CBT, so cognitive behavior therapy, and plus or minus medication. So that's kind of the NICE guideline recommendations. In all honesty, as somebody who's had CBT before, and I had it for a needle phobia, which is just a laugh a minute when you work in a hospital and there's needles everywhere. It's very much needed. Like, I remember I was a pre-reg and I was with one of the pharmacists, and I was on vascular ward, which, as you know, it can get a bit grisly on that ward. And there was like needles and lots of blood and pus and stuff. And I started feeling faint, so I kind of just went to like lie down, and a nurse came over to me and she was like, "This is really unprofessional, get up." I was like, "I'm fainting." Anyway, and then I got wrote down like very unprofessional from my supervisor. I was like, what the hell? I was fainting.
That is bad.
Like, come on. Anyway, so as somebody who's had CBT for that, like, I'm not an expert, so who am I to say like, oh, it's not going to work? But I don't know how helpful that would be, because it's very structured. There's, you know, like sort of more like talking kind of therapy might be a bit more useful. And that's something that I'm just starting at the moment. Hooray. There's coaching as well. So like executive functioning coaching, which is specifically for ADHD, because there's obviously normal coaching where it's like, you know, what do you want to do with your career or stuff like that. Yeah. And that's kind of the difference between a ADHD informed coach who's like, I know about ADHD, so I can kind of tailor my practice to you, versus an actual ADHD coach who's going to help you with the specific struggles that you have with ADHD. So there's, but also like nutrition, sleep,
lifestyle strategies,
you know, like movement, like all of this stuff. And that's why it was actually something that I wanted to create, was like a platform where you actually get holistic treatment as a patient, and you don't have to go this way, that way, be referred. The practitioners don't talk to each other. Like, you're you know, it's exhausting. It's honestly exhausting. Like when you struggle with your mental health or like, you know, struggles that come from ADHD, to then be like ping ponged left, right and centre between different people. You're like, no wonder why people fall off the wagon, you know? It's exhausting. Living is exhausting.
Yeah. Would meditation help?
Yes. So I think, you know, that is something people like, you need to do mindfulness. I'm like, no. But if you tell me what to do, I won't do it. Which hard. Actually is something, a hack, an ADHD hack. I hate that term as well.
Yeah.
Like, why should I have to hack my brain? My brain is the way it is. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, it was like, you should give me a choice. So if someone's like, do you want to do meditation or do you want to do the washing up? I'll be like, I'll do meditation, thanks. Anyway, yes, meditation, mindfulness very much will help because, you know, it kind of helps you sort of take a step back. But trying to start meditation or mindfulness when you have a very hyperactive or inattentive mind, my God, that is a lot of hurdles to get over. But there are people out there who've said, you know, like, so mum's very, like, literally last week found out she's ADHD. She's big into, you know, like yoga, somatics, mindfulness. And so she's like, just do like literally 10 seconds, like, I can feel like my tongue on the roof of my mouth kind of thing. Just to kind of like think about something else rather than this constant mental chatter that's up there. So that will definitely help. So that's what I mean. There's actually quite like a lot of non-pharmacological things that can help. But again, it's this thing of like, oh, I've been diagnosed, I want to do all of them. It's like, well, you're not suddenly going to become an expert overnight. Like all of these things take practice. And I guess something where I'm at the moment, what I'm struggling with is like, okay, how can I start learning to incorporate this into my daily life? Because I know it will have benefits and I know I don't want to rely on medication. But yeah, it's a hard balance, you know?
Fair. E.T., talk to me about ADHD burnout.
Oh, Lord above.
What is that and what does that do to a person living with ADHD?
Oh, gosh. Okay, yeah, so... Sorry.
It's okay.
Green giant. I don't have a green giant on there. So ADHD burnout. So it's essentially, we'll take the example of, say you commit to something like, I don't know, going to a friend's birthday.
Right.
You're like, yeah, buzzed for this. Or like, I'm super excited about this project. You start working on it. You know, your brain's going really fast, super speedy. And then you're kind of like focusing so much on that one thing and this commitment, you're like, oh God. And then you start overcommitting because a lot of the time people with ADHD are people pleasers.
Right.
Like I suck with boundaries. Like I cannot say no.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me to say no. Yeah. Even people that, you know, I love and know well, I'd be like, yeah, sure, no worries. And inside I'm like, why did I just say that? Oh, now I've got to do it. So then you pile on another responsibility and another one and another one and another one until, you know, you then start feeling really stressed because you've got everything going on and all the ADHD kind of struggles kick in, like with the, you know, can't focus, you know, the executive functioning. That's normally the thing for me that goes first. And what I mean by that is, you know, like showering, eating, like actually going to bed at a reasonable time, which I never do. I suck at sleep. And then all that starts happening. You then start doing like sort of unhealthy coping techniques. So for example, I'm not eating properly. I'll just have a takeaway, like fast food. And then it just gets more and more and more until you literally just crash and burn. You've got no more energy. You're completely wiped out. Like replying, when I'm burnt out, when I suffer from ADHD burnout, I can't even like reply to friends. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to eat. I don't want to work. And it's this constant cycle of being really excited about something, overcommitting, being like, oh dear, I don't think I can do this, not being able to finish a project, feeling crap about yourself, burning out, feeling like a total failure and starting all over again.
That doom loop.
It's boom and bust constantly.
Right.
And that's a classic thing with ADHD. It's all or nothing, it's boom and bust. And I guess that's kind of why I initially went to go see the GP about these sort of like mood fluctuations and this energy fluctuations. I was like, I don't get it. Like sometimes I'm literally on top of the world. I make like all these appointments to see friends, like the social calendars like filled to the brim. I'm like, I'm going to do a PhD. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then I'll just crumble. And the thing is that the difference between ADHD burnout and normal burnout is like normal burnout which I've suffered from as well, tends to be from sort of, you know, like prolonged stress at like work or like something that's going on in your family life. And, you know, that can take months to recover from. It really can take a toll. With the ADHD burnout, I see it happen within a matter of days sometimes. Sometimes it lasts a few weeks where I'm just feeling so burnt out, but it can literally be like a matter of like days.
Wow.
And then I'm straight back on my bullshit. I've like nothing. And like the only way that I can kind of, like, again, as I said, like I'm quite a visual person, so I don't know if this is going to work, but do you remember as a kid like running down steep hills with your friends?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and that feeling of like fun and free, and you're going fast, and you're like, woohoo! That's kind of what the start of ADHD burnout feels like. You're like, woohoo, this is awesome. Like, I'm going really fast, and like, look at all these plans that I'm making, and like, I'm socializing loads, and like, oh my God, everything's great. And then you start getting to the point, you're like, okay, I'm actually going a bit fast now. Like, life's going a bit fast. I kind of can't keep up. You know, people are like throwing balls at you to catch and you keep missing them. Like, you're not keeping on top of everything. And you're like, I want to slow down. Actually, I really want to slow down. I can't do this. I can't do this. And you start panicking and you're trying to put the brakes on, but you can't because you haven't quite figured out how to. And before you know it, you're just going to start hurtling towards that wall of burnout. And it just, for me, it gets to the last point where I literally just give up, and I give up into it, and you like smash it into this wall of burnout, and you're just kind of lying on the floor like, life is shit. I can't do this. But it's a very familiar sensation that you've got of, you start off on this like high, it's fun, and then it starts getting not so fun, but you kind of can't stop yourself until it's too late.
Right.
And I feel like the more you smash into that wall of burnout, the harder it can be to then pick yourself up, to start it all over again. And then I find that my resilience drops quite a lot as well, because I'm like, well, it's only going to happen again. And it does. As I said, I literally just get straight back on my bullshit. I just do it again and again and again. And that's why things like ADHD coaching can be really beneficial to help you identify when it's happening, because sometimes, very occasionally, I can be like, okay, things are going a bit fast now, like let's try and peel back. Maybe, okay, today I'm going to say no to something, and we start peeling back a little bit to try and protect myself,
which is very hard for a people pleaser.
It's just very hard for a people pleaser to do. But then and then other times you're just flying, you're just like, you know, people are shouting at you, stop, slow down. I'm like, what do you mean slow down? Like, I'm fine, like, leave me alone. That's it, you've lost control, boom, you're done.
Wow. I mean, okay, talk about the biggest myth that you have heard, you know, like the couple of them I had was everyone's a bit ADHD and everyone's being diagnosed with ADHD. What's that all about and stuff? Like, what?
So I guess we've kind of covered that everyone's a bit ADHD thing, like a lot of human traits, but it's more to do with these sort of frequency, intensity of behaviours, and it's got to be persistent and also have a, you know, an impact on your daily life. Because I think the thing is that sometimes, you know, and this is something actually that I've been thinking about quite a lot, is that actually, had I not met the criteria, that's not to say that I wasn't struggling. I was struggling. And I guess that's kind of what I'm a bit concerned about, because people who go for an assessment for ADHD, you're not going just for the shits and gigs, right? You're not going just to be like, oh, I want 10 minutes extra time in an exam or what. Like, no, like, who does that? I mean, maybe there's some people who do that. If you're doing that, please don't. But majority of the time, the reason why you reach out for help is because you are struggling, right?
Right, of course.
So then if you don't meet that criteria, what happens to you then? Then what? And actually, this is quite a lot of the people that I'm now feeling like, I wonder what happens to them, you know? What next? But going back to that, so everyone can kind of be on this sort of continuum of, you know, what's seen as normal, what's seen as not normal. But I think the issue that I have with when people say, you know, oh, everyone's a bit ADHD, is it can feel quite like flippant, like, oh, it's not a big deal. And okay, for some people it might not be, but actually, again, the majority of people who've got like either a diagnosis or, self-diagnosed or official diagnosis, it is a bloody big deal. It is absolutely all-encompassing.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's this thing of this ADHD iceberg of what people see at the top is like this hyperactive, like quirky kind of person, but it's all the stuff that's underneath that people really struggle with. So by saying, oh, but everyone's just a bit ADHD, it really like diminishes the very real struggles that people have with ADHD.
Fair.
And again, when people are like, oh, I'm so ADHD today, like I personally don't get upset by it, but for me, actually, that's almost like an invitation for me to be like, okay, well, like, what do you mean about that? And then that kind of gets this sort of conversation going of like, well, actually, what's your understanding of ADHD?
Yeah.
And then going back to the second one of everyone's been diagnosed with ADHD. I mean, it does kind of feel like, the news and TikTok and Instagram, it's just like, hey, I'm ADHD or autistic or, and you're like, bloody hell, where's this come from? Well, actually, ADHD was first described in like the 18th century or something. Like this is not a new condition. And actually, it was thought that these kind of, this sort of ADHD brain types, that it was actually beneficial. Like we were the sort of hunters of the pack, because like, very like over responsive to like stimulus and like fight or flight, hyper aware, like so actually it was a benefit. It's just now that we're in this society that it's seen as a hindrance rather than a help, but I'll get onto that later. But this thing about everyone's been diagnosed with ADHD, I mean, you read the stats earlier, and like actually when I did the maths, obviously not just now, but it equates to about 3.6% of the UK population.
Wow.
So no, not everybody is diagnosed with ADHD these days. And again, it's because there's a lot more awareness. I mean, look, I'm talking about it today.
Of course.
And also, I think as well for the media, they love it. They're like, 10 years waiting list. They're like, they sort of sensationalize it as well. And so that's why I think, and because also, I think it's because adults now are being diagnosed with ADHD, that they're able to use their voice and speak up about it, that there's more awareness. It's just basically, it's increased awareness. I would say it's increased awareness as opposed to true figures.
I get it.
Potentially,
Looking back, E.T., what do you think ADHD has taught you about yourself?
It's okay to be different. And that actually it's those people who don't feel that they fit into society that will shine the brightest eventually. And that actually all these qualities that I have, whether they're positive or negative, like I am the way that I am, and I'm just going to start trying to unmask and trying to be unapologetically me. Actually, I've got some awesome qualities like ADHD, and again, it's this sort of thing of, is it my ADHD, is it my personality? I mean, I don't know how you can kind of separate the two sometimes, but I'm super empathetic, and actually I think that what makes me like a really good pharmacist, to be honest with you. Like,
can I tell a story about you?
Hit me. What is it?
Which really, really, really surprised me. And, we were working together, and you were working on the healthcare of the elderly ward. And I found out that there was a patient who was on end-of-life pathway. And you found out that this patient does not have any family. And this patient is going to be spending his last breaths by himself. And you didn't know him. To you, this person was just a patient. And I found out that you came over a weekend and you sat in the room holding his hand until he passed away. Who does that? And I was like, what?
Who does that?
And it was the most beautiful thing, one of the most beautiful things I have ever heard. And you're damn right, that is a quality, to be that empathetic so selflessly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Do you remember?
I do. Honestly, care of the elderly is, to be honest with you, it's probably why I was so freaking burnt out, because, you know, there was a lot of instances you just staying till like God knows what time. And like, you know, of course, everybody, that was, I think, during COVID actually, where like relatives couldn't visit. And, you know, a lot of people put in like extra hours. But yeah, I just really had this thing on care of the elderly that it just broke my heart that like they either didn't have relatives or their relatives couldn't come. And I was like, do you know what? Like no one should die alone. And yeah, I didn't know this man. I literally had met him like the day before he was admitted, and he wasn't the only one. But I just thought, do you know what? I've got some time.
That's beautiful.
That's
very beautiful.
I love how empathetic I am, but as we were saying the other day, it can be a bit a double-edged sword. But yeah, I love that about me.
Of course. Now, okay, we're getting to the end of the thing, but I want to ask you one more personal question. If you could speak to your younger self before diagnosis now, what would you tell her?
Baby girl, you rock. I would say...
Bye.
I would say sod all the bullies. You don't know how special you are.
Yeah.
You don't know how awesome it is to be different. And actually all this crap that you're going through, you will learn from it and you will stand tall one day, and one day you will start to find your voice and use these experiences as a positive thing in life.
Yes.
And it's beautiful being different.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say to her.
That's beautiful. And I would like to, you know, personally say that the entire reason why this is happening is because you want to help others.
Yeah.
You know, it's not because like you are a bit camera shy.
Really?
How long have I been telling you to start an Instagram channel and start helping people?
Listen, would love to. Again, I've got the idea of...
But I know you're going to do it. But the point is you want to do that to actually help other people as well.
Yeah, I do. I would love to do that.
And I hope this is a start. I hope so. I hope that now that you're, you know, you've gotten over that hump of speaking in front of a camera for an hour...
I love talking.
Exactly. So put it to good use, which I'm sure you will, you know?
Yeah.
But okay, one last question. The last part of this podcast, I call it Dose of Health. And if I give you a magic wand, and which is called Dose of Health, and you can wave it and change one thing immediately within the world of ADHD, whether it's diagnosis, whether it's whatever, what would that be?
For people to really understand what it's like to actually make changes to accommodate those that are different to you. That's what I would like. And I guess that's kind of like neurodivergent people all over. But yeah, to really not just shrug it off as like, whenever it's ADHD, everyone's ADHD. Yeah, to really understand, listen, and actually support people to not just survive in this world, but to actually like thrive as well. Like there's that seal analogy, you know. Sorry, I'm just going to keep talking.
No, it's fine. Carry on.
There's an analogy of like, you know, when you look at seals on land, you know, these big fat lumps, and it's like, oh bloody hell, that looks hard work, you know, getting about, like they're cute and they're dumpy and they're just like, oh, what a stupid animal. And then you see them in the water and they're just like different beings. You know, they're graceful, they're elegant, they're fast, you know, and you're like, wow, seals are awesome. Like, look what they can do. And I guess that's kind of the way that sometimes is people describe it as like, you know, when people who are neurodivergent are supported properly, are accommodated properly, are listened to, look how high they can fly. But it's society that makes them stuck on land. So yeah, that's...
Well, the amount of people who are in the tech world, the CEOs and stuff, most of them are on some kind of a spectrum.
Yeah, because...
So they're very high achievers.
Very much so, but it's... And again, like, you know, that this whole thing of like, oh, everyone who's ADHD is creative and stuff like that is a massive generalization. And like, you know, we do have to be careful with that, because just because you're ADHD doesn't necessarily mean that you're creative. And if you're not, like, that's totally cool. Like, who cares? Just you do you, hun.
Be you.
But it's and that's why neurodiversity awareness training is so not only important, it's actually like legal, because
Yeah.
legally you have to, you know, accommodate neurodivergent colleagues. What was I saying?
Neurodiversity training, like why is it important?
Yeah, why is it important?
Yeah.
Sorry, I know you wanted to wrap up.
No,
but,
it's fine.
Happier staff, better work environments, better staff retention rates, less staff sickness and burnouts due to mental health. And it's the law as well, you know, so neurodivergence conditions, which is like, you know, it's just an umbrella term, and there's like so many underneath it. It's not just autism and ADHD, it's also like dyslexia, dyspraxia, OCD. Yeah, it's actually protected under Section 6 of the Equality Act 2010. So you've actually got, as an employer, you've got a legal obligation to ensure that if somebody comes to you saying, I need reasonable adjustments, like, you have to try and support
Provide
them.
it.
You have to, like, it's a legal requirement. And if you don't, then, yeah. There have actually recently been a couple of lawsuits, I think, filed against employers for that. And this is not a threat, by the way.
No.
But it's just to say that, you know, neurodiversity awareness is not a nice to have. It's a should have. Like,
it's a must have.
It's a must have. And that's why I'm doing these talks of, like, you know, just like a quick 1 hour lunchtime.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not an expert. This is my understanding. This is what it's like living with ADHD. Voila. Take it from there. So,
Amazing. E.T., I think this was a great hour. I think I learned loads. Like, it's one thing to read about it and one thing to hear from somebody who's living with it.
Yeah.
And hopefully by doing this chat, we would raise awareness and you know, people who are struggling, who do think that they're different, they don't need to be ashamed of it. If anything, embrace it, be proud of it.
Embrace it.
And talk, and talk about it.
For sure, exactly. Because, like, honestly, like, you will find your tribe.
Yeah.
Like, you will. And I think, again, it's this sense of never feeling like you belong somewhere.
Yeah.
You start talking to other people, even though we're all got very different experiences, you know, but there are common threads that bind us all together.
Yeah.
And also, if you are seeing people who are, you know, celebrities, whatever, who are like, have got ADHD, but their life looks so picture perfect, or they're like, oh, I figured out how to hack my ADHD, like, just be aware, like, okay, awesome, cool for them, but it's probably a front as well. And actually, like, I was diagnosed earlier this year, like, I'm still a shit show. Like, let's muddle through this together. Like, it's cool. Like, yeah.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Be great. Stay great. And baby girl, you rock.
And baby girl, you rock.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much, Abby.